welcome to GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max broadcast number 123 and the final concluding part of our cheeky pre-record on the details and the deep dives of the building editor. This broadcast is unusual in that I'm not even here. This is a pseudo-live broadcast, a pre-recorded video that you are listening to. However, we are being very clever, and tagged onto the end of it is indeed a live chat on Discord where you can ask some questions, and if we timed it right, you can actually get some answers. Certainly questions about the building editor will be readily answered super quick, but feel free to ask any question you want. Hopefully we do have some form of answer that will be delivered through the guise of Zach, who is not on holiday, as opposed to Lee, who he totally is on holiday, is not able to join you live to answer those questions. So the third part on the building editor is about the last section, which of course is painting and custom textures and a few other cool things that I'll deep dive into. But just as a recap, if you want to go back 2 weeks, the broadcast from 2 weeks ago was about creating rooms for your building and editing them. And then the second part was adding doors, windows, staircases, and looking a little bit at the wall toggle mode. So this time we're going to talk about everything else, everything that I've not already covered, and we're going to go in and have a look what we can do when we've made a building, and maybe a little bit what you can do after you've made the building. But let's see how far we get into this. Anyone who's tuned in to expect some GameGuru Classic news, I mentioned it briefly in the first of our pre-recorded broadcasts, but it's very, very difficult to deliver up-to-date hot news when you're doing a video that's been pre-recorded for broadcast 3 weeks into the future. So any news I might partake to reveal is 3 weeks old, so it's kind of useless to attempt to read the future to figure out what news is available. I can sort of hint at there was something really cool that today, speaking in the past, from your perspective, was imminent. So I think 3 weeks will have passed, maybe that has been revealed. So I'm really excited for you future guys and gals who've got access to that cool commit. But for me, in the pre-recorded universe, I'm just going to tackle the third and final section of our building editor deep dive. So I can kind of resume where I left off, quite literally, because it was only like 10 minutes ago, which is this, the building editor. I took the liberty of freshing the scene, so this is a brand new scene we're going to create. I'm going to start off big. I want to start off with a feature that, again, in previous broadcasts you've heard about this elusive version 2 list. This was also a thing which was on the version 2 list, and we moved it to a version 1 item because we realised that everyone's buildings are going to look the same because they all kind of use the same textures. Now you've got the ability to create buildings with your own textures, and with that you're going to create a lot more interesting, different looking buildings when you stack them side by side. So I'm going to dive straight into that. The very first thing I'm going to do is that. So right now this is the default list: floor, ceiling, wall interior, exterior, corner support and roofs. These are all the default textures that we start you off with the building editor. You can change that to a folder of your own design. So if we click on change texture folder, and I'm going to scroll into my writables, I've already created something called wooden structures. I really didn't create it. It's already in the GameGuru Max folder structure. I just moved it into the writables folder and pretended it's something I'd made. I'm no artist, but we'll click OK. You've noticed all of these are now changed. These are textures that were in that folder and have been listed out and then mapped, first come first serve, to these different types: floor, ceiling, wall, exterior, and roof. So if I just come out a little bit, the little guy there is just for scale, and create a room, say here. You know, in no particular order, it did actually quite a good job. We've got a wooden floor, green wall, white exterior, some strange looking colour for the corners. But yeah, pretty decent. And I think this was actually a leftover from the second broadcast, so the layer height looks a bit weird, so let's get that back to that's the correct size for a nice door. But yeah, I'm not happy with those corners, so what we can do is go into here, and then I think that's the texture for corner supports. I think it is anyway. And but that's after the fact. Now when I change this, this is the textures a room is going to use, not had used, but going to use when you create a room. So if I created another room right next to it, you see how it's using the texture that I just changed? But this is an old room with my previous selection. So if I go into edit and delete that, and then I can just move this. So, oh yeah, that was the room I created. And that looks a little bit nicer. So yeah, that was really quick. I just had a folder that I created earlier. I just pointed it to the building editor to that folder, and boom, I'm using my own textures. These textures do not exist in the building editor by default. It's a folder structure, sorry, a texture folder that exists for the old EBE, or the structure editor, which was quite, you know, it was very well populated with textures. I just copied it into a different location and said, yep, that's my custom texture folder, and that's how I got a nice wooden floor, some nice green walls. So yeah, that's how you can select your textures and create a room. Let me just create another room just to show you what the next section is about. As you see, I created a second room. It showed all of those textures because that's the textures that it thinks about. But if I go into edit mode, I can change my mind on a room level. So for that room, I'm happy with the walls being green. In this littler room, I don't want my walls being green. I want them a different colour, maybe slightly pinkish. Yeah, looks quite nice. Little rail halfway along. So there you go. And I didn't have to paint individual walls because I'm editing whole of room. It changed all the interior textures for this room. So that's pretty cool. So now if I create a third room for my third demonstration, let's create it in this shape. Let's say I wanted different textures for each individual wall. Can't do it with the edit room feature because that changes all of them. The way you do that is you go into this one, paint mode, and the final mode that we're going to cover in our building editor deep dive. And then once you're in paint mode, you notice that your highlighter is now pointing at anything that has a surface. And I think it's pretty straightforward what I'm going to do next. So if I select that, looks like some external brick, and click that surface, and these corners, it changes that texture. So I can go around, change these, I can change that and that. There you go. I've got a nice weather-beaten exterior texture. I'm still not happy with this interior green, so let's see what we can come up with. What's that? It's like a painted red, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, I'm no designer. But as you can see, I was able to individually choose. Let's say this was an end wall and I wanted to wallpaper it with something expensive. There you go. Got a nice panel wall there, maybe a nice panel wall there. Now, in fact, I really like that. I'm going to have that for everything. And then just change this end wall as the feature wall. So maybe it's that. A bit dark. Yeah. Okay. So you get the idea. You can select your textures before you create the room. If you've accidentally already created the room and you want to edit it, then you can actually still edit the textures en masse. But then the paint mode allows you to individually go in and paint individual walls with individual textures, whether those textures are the one that we've provided or a custom texture folder with textures that you've provided. And that's about the extent of the paint mode. It's every level of control that you might or might not want, from I want to make a building super quick to I want a little bit more control over which surface has what texture. But this is kind of useless until we can put it into our game and play with it. And for that to happen, we're going to need a way in. Right now you've got 3 rooms connected together and completely sealed. So we're going to need a door. So let's put a door in. If you want to know about doors, windows, staircases and all sundries, check out last week's broadcast. I said yesterday. It's not even yesterday. An hour ago, let's say. So I'm going to stick to the same door. If you know anything about level design, consistency creates the illusion of reality. Because if you think about someone who's building a building, they're going to order 20 of the same door, aren't they, to save money. So that gets us in the first room, that door gets us into the second room, which gets us into the third strange room, and then maybe there's something here which, let's play Lee. So let's put in a staircase is about there. Go up a level, which leads up maybe to the roof, or we can probably create a secret room. Now, before we created that room, it was using this as our texture choices. Go back down to the first one. As you can see, the staircase isn't lining up to the floor above, so you do match layer height to stairs, making sure that you're on the layer that has the stairs, and now you can actually see that the layer height has dropped, and now that staircase will line up to the first floor, and the staircase emerges perfectly onto this floor, and we can run around here and whatever gets stored in this lovely secret room. For now, we have our building in construction. Let's drop down to the ground floor again. Great thing about doing a pre-record is this is a bug, and we've just now got evidence from beginning to end how that can be reproduced. So whether that's something that can be done quickly or is a mystery, we've now got a way to reproduce it. So pretend this wall is there. But certainly now we've reproduced it, it's a 5-minute fix. But without further ado, I'm pretty sure that's just a display thing. I want to save out my 2-story building because I want to put it into the game. And we've not shown this before in the previous 2 broadcasts, but now we can show it, which is how do we get this into a GameGuru Max level. You could save the project because you can do a lot of building projects. I'm going to go straight to export because it builds in the ability to save out the building project as well. And I'm going to call it L-shape build, and then save. That saves the project, and export exports this whole building as something that we can choose. So we click export. Model exported successfully. Now we can go to GameGuru Max. A lot of people probably recognize this, which is our little test area in a canyon. That this whole canyon that goes on for miles was created in about 12 seconds. Go to add, users and building editor. That's where everything exports to. And we'll look for L-shaped build, which is the one that we created. And we drop it in here. And then, providing this is our stable DX11 latest version, it won't do some crazy freeze crash because I've got an old AMD DX12 Zero card. But I think you can kind of see that it is the same shape as it was. Remember that wall bug? That looks like it's actually got all the way through to the export. This proves that this is a real broadcast because I'm showing you warts and all. But imagine there's a wall here. Imagine there's a wall here. And then this is our second door, which goes through to our little ante-room, through to the last door, which has the different looking wall textures. Now remember, this was custom texture, so it actually survived the export process and dropping into GameGuru Max, and then running up a staircase into our secret first floor room. We can put lovely things in. Yeah, it looks like we are running the DX11 latest because as soon as I turned around it should have frozen, but it didn't, so that's cool. And this here, I think I mentioned it in previous broadcasts, each room by default gets a light added to it. That means you can actually see what's going on inside each room. You do have control over these lights, and that's the next thing I want to show you. So don't worry about these 2 walls that are disappeared. That's just an export issue, and the room that we saw a little bit earlier did definitely have a wall there and a wall there with a door that punches through. But I'm not going to worry too much about that because this is great. If we can reproduce bugs at this stage whilst we're still in early access, we can get them fixed. So when we go to version 1, we're solid. But that's not what I want to worry about. What I want to show you is the fact that this building that we've just dropped in is a smart object. So I've just clicked on the object. Normally an object, let's say this column, it's just one object. It's just an object that you can move about. But this is what's called a smart object. What a smart object is, it's an object made up of many objects. And if you think about it for 5 minutes, it makes sense. This building actually has things in it. It has doors. It has lights. All of these things are separate objects, all composited together to create the overall building that you see as a single thing you can drag in. And if you look on the left hand side, you'll actually see how that building is made up of this, which I assume is the hulk, the husk of the building. You've got 3 doors, you've got a staircase, and you've got 4 lights, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms that make up this building. And what's really cool, I mean, obviously you can move it around as a single object, but a smart object is just a glorified name for a group. And we have group controls. Look, ungroup smart object. So now they're individual objects. The door is separate than the husk. The light is separate from the building. That door is separate from everything else. So why is that cool? Well, that is very cool for one very specific reason. Now that all of the individual objects are separate, you can control them separately. For example, I could click this door. No, even better, I can click this light, go into the palette, scroll down, go into light behaviors, and I can change the behavior of that light. So at the moment it's toggle light. What does that mean? Well, whilst we have a little bit of time, I can show you. Let's say there's a light switch on a wall. Add switch. That'll do. So I can drop in this light switch onto the wall. Let's say that wall. Let's see why a little bit. And then I can go to my visual editor and I can connect that switch to that light. And because that light is a toggler, it'll switch on and off. So you switch the light on, the light comes on. Switch the light switch off, the light goes off. And now you can see the power. The building has actually provided you with the light and the doors and potentially windows, but then we can go in and change individual behaviors of the elements within that building. So I can say, I don't want toggle, I want it to flicker on and off as if the light is damaged. So now I've actually changed the behavior of that light. Maybe I want this one to flicker as well. No, let's say I want it to strobe. So I've set the light to a strobe. I've got this light here. What light can I choose for that one? Flame, it's like a candle. And if I run, all these light behaviors have now been changed. I know I'm opening a door. I could just run through the light wall. But you can see that light is now flickering. This second room, the light's on a strobe. This third room, and it's looking like a candle flicker effect. And I've been going through these doors like, oh yeah, door. But doors have behaviors as well, remember? So if we go and find a door, like this one, go into behaviors, door rotate, which is here. And you can change the behavior of the door. Now I'm not saying change it to like a document or a drink from water, but what you can do is change the properties. So for example, there's a door slidey one, so maybe you have the door that slides through the ceiling, so it goes up, and you can actually control parameters, you know, what direction it slides up, the speed at which the door moves, the text that shows when the door is near and you want to operate it, and how does it operate. So you can change all these properties. So that's something that wasn't immediately obvious if you grabbed hold of the building editor and started making buildings and adding doors, thinking that those doors were fixed. They're not. If you ungroup the smart object, you have access to literally every object you add it into that building. Now, this isn't a version 1 thing, but one thing that's missing is right now you have to break up the building in order to get access to the individual objects within that building. Would it not be great if you could actually access the individual properties of the object without detaching it from the smart object as a whole? Now, maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you start doing what I've been demonstrating in this broadcast, you quickly realise that, wait a minute, now I've changed the light to what I want, and now I want to move the building 50 feet to the left. Look what happens. The husk is separate from all of the objects that make up what used to make up that smart object, because you literally just said, I want to detach all the objects from the smart group. Which you might want that. Most people, I think, wouldn't want that. They just want to be able to edit that property of the door, edit the property of the light, and then still drag the building wherever they want that building to be. So yeah, that's something that's, you could call it a bug. I would call it a necessary feature that we're going to need to add. So without having to detach the smart object into its component objects, you can still individually select the object. The reason it didn't go straight into version 1 is there was a bit of a conflict in that when you're clicking on a building and you accidentally click on the door, is it the door that you wanted to select, or is it the building? If you move it, what do you want to move? If you edit it, what do you want to edit it? So there's a bit of a conflict there. But I think we can resolve it pretty quickly, and so that's something you can look forward to in the future. So hopefully that was super useful. A bit of a more of a deep dive than you've had so far in terms of the building editor and one bug reveal. That's just proving that this is live and in color as far as we can get it. And this is super useful not only for us to be able to fix it, but for you to see that we are still in early access. It's still being worked on. This stuff is super, super cutting edge, and the broadcasts are about that. For you to see under the hood, under the veneer, to see what we're working on as we're working on it, and our anticipated release date of when you can get your hands on this. So just as a general recap, the building editor is already available in the latest version. Check out the broadcast from 2 weeks ago on how you can get the latest version of DX11 for those people who are on AMD cards who do want to freeze crash, but also get the latest version of the entities for the doors, windows and staircases, and the latest version of the building editor. During my short but necessary absence, work has also been going on across the board. Not only working on some more RPG related stuff, looking forward to revealing more on that when I return live, but also bug fixes on both the building editor and the core GameGuru Max as well. So hopefully you've been getting those builds. They'll be in the form of the EXP build on Steam. So there is a beta code floating around the socials. If you get that beta code and enter it into Steam, the EXP build shows up. It's called Experimental, and you can select that and you get the latest, greatest fixes. And on my return, we'll sort out a proper public build that is tested and has all of the fixes up to that point, and we'll do a proper announcement. We'll tell you what's in it. So I hope that was useful. I think that pretty much covers everything that we've added for the building editor version 1. We absolutely anticipate that you'll want to see more cool things added to the building editor tool over time. But for now and right now, the ability to create buildings quickly and have doors and lights, staircases and windows that to some degree operate as they should, and they're not just eye candy but they actually function. I think that goes a long way for you to create all the kinds of buildings that you want for your different game ideas. And when you hit a brick wall where you think, the building editor doesn't go far enough, and you find yourself resorting to dragging in objects in the GameGuru Max level editor and supplement your building, that's the point what we want to know what you're doing. Because if you tell us that that's what you're doing for each of your buildings, and it will be really great if it was part of the building editor, those are the features that we're looking for next for version 2. We already have our own list. There's some really cool features that we've listed for version 2 update. But we also want to find out what you use the building editor for, because it could be that the things that you need are not on the list and also are more important because everyone's asking for the same 3 or 4 things, and we will make those the priority. So please let us know what you think about the building editor and how it can be improved for a version 2. This is the final pre-record. I will be back for real next Wednesday at 7 PM GMT. Can't tell you exactly what date that is. My brain's gone a little bit blank on that. But yeah, next Wednesday at 7 PM GMT, I'll be here for real, and I'll be able to participate in a real Q&A and answer any questions that you've got that may have been raised weeks gone by and never really got an answer. Well, that's the opportunity to show up in our live chat, ask our question, and get the answer from the horse's mouth. In the meantime, we'll be running, as usual, extended questions session on Discord. I will provide a link to that Discord window in the description of this video below, and whilst I am able, I can show you this is what the link will look like. So when you click the link, you will be taken here, and then all you got to do is scroll down and click on the live stream questions and ask your question, and Zach will be happy to answer all of the questions that he can. But if it's a question about the building editor, you are guaranteed an answer, unless it's a question about what features are coming next, because quite frankly we haven't decided on what that list is going to be. So I hope you enjoyed this final broadcast pre-record, and I look forward to talking to you proper live next Wednesday at 7 p.m. GMT. So until then, good luck on Discord, and I'll speak to you soon. Goodbye.